Rescue workers in Tibet search for survivors after a powerful earthquake kills dozens of people. Ready for action, Taiwan's military shows they're always prepared as they hold combat drills ahead of the Lunar New Year holidays. Opposition lawmakers accuse Taiwan's ruling party of using shady tactics to take down political rivals. Plus,
your heart rate increased a bit. Are you sure about the coffee?
The latest global tech is on display in Vegas, but could a looming Trump presidency cast a shadow over the industry's future? A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Leslie Liao. Chinese officials say at least 95 people are dead in Tibet after a powerful earthquake hit the Himalayan region. Rescue efforts are underway with dozens still trapped or missing. Harel Hughes reports.
Rescue workers search through rubble for survivors after a 6.8 magnitude earthquake struck the Tibetan holy city of Shigatse, leaving a trail of destruction across the city and surrounding area. Shigatse sits just at the foot of the Himalayan mountains and is one of the holiest cities in Tibetan Buddhism. The city and remote mountain areas are home to more than 800,000 people. The earthquake struck here just after 9 a.m., with dozens of aftershocks in the succeeding hours. The powerful tremors were felt hundreds of kilometers away in nearby Nepal and northern India, sending people fleeing their homes and out into the streets.
भनेर म त बच्चाले खाट हल्ला भनेर घचा किन हल्लाउँछ भन्दै कराउँदै सुतिरहेको आएर खाटको हल्लिएछ पछि त अनि झ्याल पनि यसो हेर्छु झ्याल नि हल्लिन्छ अनि भूकम्प आएछ भनेर बच्चालाई चिच्चाएर कराएर तल आइ डरले अहिले दिमाग कस्तो भइराछ
Chinese President Xi Jinping has ordered all-out rescue efforts in Tibet. But with the high altitude in the remote mountainous areas and below freezing conditions, reaching those most affected may take days, and the death toll is expected to rise. Neil Nien and Harel Hughes for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's military is starting its annual combat readiness exercises ahead of the Lunar New Year. All three branches of the military are on alert for the drills. Jaime Okan is with the Army in Hsinchu County.
For the next few days, Taiwan's military is giving us an inside look into how it's preparing for a potential conflict. These combat readiness exercises are designed to test individual units' combat readiness across the country. Every year, Taiwan's military puts on this public display, not just to show that they're capable, but also to assure the public that the military is still on guard during the long holiday. At the end of January, millions of people in Taiwan are expected to travel as they celebrate the new Lunar Year. But the military needs to make sure it's ready 24 hours a day, 365 days every year, so the rest of Taiwan can rest easy.
原来我们过年都有许多国军官兵在我们背后默默地守护着我们，而这次我也将成为家人最坚实的后盾。也请大家放心，只要有我们在，定能让大家过个好年。
The exercise on display here is a drill where a group of soldiers use tanks, armored vehicles, and attack helicopters to push back an enemy force. In recent months, China, which claims Taiwan and threatens invasion to bring it under its control, has increased its military pressure on the country. The defending team on display here is one of the largest brigades stationed in Hsinchu. They are responsible for protecting northern Taiwan, which includes the capital of Taipei.
更强调于战场中我们实战会面临的一些事情跟一些项目，让大家有系统的联合性的一种方式去做操演，以达到更加的训练目的。
Drills like these ahead of the Lunar New Year have been going around Taiwan for decades and are an important part of the country's military training. Soldiers taking part in the exercises here told me that it's all about muscle memory and making sure they can react as quickly as possible so that if an attack does happen, they're ready for whatever comes their way. Fu Hua Hong and Jaime Okan in Hsinchu for TaiwanPlus.
The small opposition Taiwan People's Party is calling for people to come out and support their protest against political interference in the judicial system. They say that Taiwan's ruling Democratic Progressive Party is using the judiciary to go after political opponents. Tiffany Wong reports outside the judiciary.
绿色威权，司法不公。
The Taiwan People's Party is calling for impartiality in the judiciary. They say that the ruling Democratic Progressive Party is using the court system to go after politicians that they do not agree with. This is all about Ko Wen-je, who's the TPP's former party chair, who's currently detained incommunicado and under charges of corruption. Prosecutors went back and forth between the High Court and the District Court, appealing in 3 bail hearings to finally get him back in detention. And the Taiwan People's Party is calling this political interference. Ke is an influential figure who's the founder and spiritual leader of the party, and his supporters affectionately call him Uncle in Chinese. And he even earned over a quarter of the vote in the presidential elections last year. No small feat for a third force party candidate. And he especially gained support among the young people who are tired of the established two-party system, the ruling Democratic Progressive Party and the main opposition, Kuomintang. And the Taiwan People's Party says that this has made Ke himself a threat in the DPP's eyes.
绿色党国的体制，重新的摧毁台湾的司法独立。绿色党国的体制，再一次的践踏了台湾人民好不容易才争取来的民主法治。
The Taiwan People's Party has so far not provided any evidence that the Democratic Progressive Party or the President Lai Ching-te have directly interfered in the judiciary or Ke's case. But the Taiwan People's Party is calling on their supporters to come out to Freedom Square outside Chiang Kai-shek Memorial Hall in Taipei on Saturday to make their voices heard. If over 10,000 people show up as the party expects, this would be the first big protest by the party since the new administration began last year, and it would be a major counter to the several DPP-aligned protests we saw last year known as the Bluebird movement that were also over concerns of separation of powers in the legislature and the judiciary. And it looks like this is going to be a running theme in Taiwan's politics over the next few years as we see an extremely divided government where the president is from the Democratic Progressive Party, the legislature has no single party with a majority, and the top court sits half empty as lawmakers have rejected the president's recent nominations. Luffy Li and Tiffany Wong in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's legislature has approved a controversial measure to raise police officer pensions. The new provision grants officers up to 80% of their final salary or a maximum monthly pension of around $2,200 US. That's more than many other civil servants, including professors and even heads of government departments. Opponents to the measure say the pay gap is unfair and worry national pension funds could run out sooner than expected. Lawmakers supporting the measure argue that the raise is justified given the high-risk nature of police work. The Philippines has tasked its military and Coast Guard with monitoring a large Chinese ship operating in its exclusive economic zone. The Chinese Coast Guard ship was spotted about 70 nautical miles off the coast of the Philippines province of Zambales on Sunday. Known to the Philippines as the Monster, the 165-meter vessel is operating in a part of the South China Sea claimed by both countries. Manila has called its presence an act of intimidation, coercion, and aggression and ordered it to leave. China says the ship is conducting law enforcement duties within its own waters. North Korea has released images of the missile it test-fired on Monday, confirming it carried a hypersonic warhead. North Korean state media says the missile flew 1,500 kilometers, its longest flight so far. Pyongyang says it is capable of striking remote targets in the Pacific. The test comes 2 weeks ahead of incoming U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's inauguration. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un recently said that his country will adopt its toughest policy towards the U.S. without mentioning Trump. The world's biggest tech companies are in Las Vegas for annual expo CES. The hype around AI has carried through to the new year. But another talking point that's come up is U.S. President-elect Donald Trump and how his tariff strategy may impact the tech sector. Joyce Tseng has more.
Doors have opened in Vegas for one of the largest technology shows in the U.S., CES, or the Consumer Electronics Show. On display are the latest gadgets in automotives to robotics, like this electronic pet and this robotic exercise chair. The biggest buzzword, though, is still AI. And to keep up with this major demand for computing, leading chip designers have rolled out a slew of new semiconductors. California-based AMD unveiled a new roster of processors for laptops, desktops, and gaming handhelds. Intel, too, has come out with a new lineup of chips in its first expo since the shock resignation of its CEO, Pat Gelsinger, last month. Interim CEO Michelle Johnston Holthouse said the firm's new chips are more power efficient thanks to AI. Arguably the most highly anticipated product reveal came from Nvidia, its Taiwan-born celebrity CEO Jensen Huang, showcasing the company's new RTX 50 series graphic cards.
Here it is.
It doubles the performance of its previous generation, marking a breakthrough for challenges like real-time rendering of video game graphics driven by AI. Nvidia is also packing their computing power into thin, light laptops.
So can you imagine? You get this incredible graphics card here, Blackwell. We're going to shrink it and put it in there. Does that make any sense?
Huang's keynote comes off the back of Nvidia's stock closing at a record high, bringing the company's valuation to $3.66 trillion US. Shares of chipmakers across the board have surged, riding on the promise of strong AI-led demand. That includes Taiwan's TSMC, whose shares beat its standing record from the previous day, closing around $35 US on Taiwan's exchange TAIEX. The Vegas trade show comes less than 2 weeks before President-elect Donald Trump takes office, and concerns around his campaign pledges to slap widespread tariffs on imports from U.S. trading partners are echoing within the show halls.
While tariffs are a negotiating tool for him, and will have some difficult, even terrorizing moments for the business community and American consumers, innovation in the world will be better off if the best people in the world can be allowed to create products and trade with each other.
Tech innovation is moving faster than ever, and though CES is keeping an upbeat tone focused on the gadgets, uncertainty lies ahead for the sector, with the threat of new government policies that could cost businesses billions. Devin Tsai and Joyce Sin for TaiwanPlus.
Coming up after the break, new tech breathes fresh morning air into one of Taiwan's most celebrated artworks.
"2025 is calling. Louder, brighter, and bolder. From the roar of the crowds to the quiet moments of triumph. A year to experience sports at its finest. Grab your tickets, tune in, and cheer like never before. Every play counts. Every minute matters. Game on, Taiwan.
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. Taiwan's vision specialists are battling over who has the right to the English title of optometrist. Taiwan certifies eye specialists differently from English-speaking countries, leaving gray areas that are at the center of hot debate. John Van Trieste has more.
Hundreds of vision specialists gather at the legislature with a tricky linguistic demand. Officially, the government uses the English word optician to describe these specialists. It's a term for eyeglass and contact experts who fill prescriptions and check lenses. But these protesters say that's the wrong word, with big consequences for this misuse of terms. They say they are really optometrists, a term that implies providing vision care like eye exams, and an entirely different profession. And because of the confusion over English terms, protesters say, they can run into trouble at overseas events like professional conferences. They say reclaiming the term optometrist is a matter of dignity as well as accurate definition. But the issue isn't quite that clear-cut, because Taiwan has different standards for background and experience than English-speaking countries. There are gray areas, and some eye doctors say that these optometrists are no great respecters of definitions themselves, even overstepping their qualifications and potentially hurting patients who don't know better.
有点违法的行为了，有诊断治疗的侵犯医师的权利了。你们可以放弃这些工作，这些诊断治疗的工作吗？我们可以考虑这个名词，他们拒绝了。
The blurry boundaries from one field of vision care to the next, and confusion over how to match Taiwanese terms to English ones, are issues the government says it's considering.
名称甚至在组织的参与或者是相关业务的分工会有一定程度的影响的话，那当然我们得要洽相关的其他我们讲利害关系人一起讨论。
But there's little patience among protesters for a name change. And with pushback from doctors for non-medical technicians to stay in their own lane, it's hard to see an easy solution or an end in this battle over English. Klein Wang and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
220 people have been evacuated after a building collapsed in New Taipei overnight. No one was hurt when the apartment building gave way, possibly due to construction going on next door. Residents were evacuated from a dozen nearby buildings and are being housed in a community center. Local officials are investigating the cause of the collapse. Nippon Steel and U.S. Steel are suing the U.S. government for blocking their merger deal. U.S. President Joe Biden blocked Nippon's nearly $15 billion purchase of U.S. Steel, citing national security concerns and fulfilling a campaign promise. The takeover was announced in December 2023, but faced opposition from U.S. labor unions and the White House. The two companies blasted the decision and are saying Biden's block violated due process and was to advance his own political agenda. Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has announced that he will resign as the leader of his party and his country, but will remain until a new leader is chosen. As Chris Gorin reports, Trudeau's tenure saw major challenges at home and abroad.
After nearly a decade as Canada's Prime Minister and almost 12 years as leader of the country's Liberal Party, Justin Trudeau says he's stepping down.
I intend to resign as party leader, as Prime Minister, after the party selects its next leader through a robust, nationwide, competitive process.
Trudeau, the son of a former prime minister, came into office in 2015, promising progressive change and a more inclusive government. His foreign policy included strong support for Ukraine in its fight against Russia's full-scale invasion, providing military and humanitarian aid to Kyiv. Trudeau managed tense relations with some countries, like China, which imprisoned 2 Canadian citizens in 2018 after his government arrested Huawei executive Meng Wanzhou over financial crimes in the U.S. All 3 were later released. In another incident, he called out Beijing, saying it had interfered in recent Canadian elections. After a meeting about the issue with Chinese President Xi Jinping was leaked, Xi confronted Trudeau about it in public.
Everything we discuss is leaked to the paper. That's not appropriate. if there is.
We will continue to look to work constructively together, but there will be things we will disagree on, and we will have
That's great.
Relations with India also worsened under Trudeau, after a Sikh activist and Canadian citizen was shot and killed in British Columbia, in what Trudeau says is part of India's program of transnational repression. At home in Canada, a sluggish economy and internal party battles have left Trudeau and his party deeply unpopular. The most likely candidate to replace him is Conservative Party leader Pierre Poilievre, whose party is leading by large margins in recent polls. Poilievre has criticized Trudeau's policies for harming the economy, here referring to an unofficial coalition between the Liberals and the leftist New Democratic Party, or NDP.
We need a carbon tax election now to choose between the NDP Liberal costly coalition or common sense Conservatives who will axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime.
Canada's parliament has effectively been suspended until late March, meaning an election will come no sooner than May. That means Trudeau will likely face yet another challenge while still in office: the tariffs threatened by incoming U.S. President Donald Trump. Trudeau's exit will mark the end of a political era in Canada, the nation still facing major global challenges and divided on his legacy. Alex Chun and Chris Gorin for TaiwanPlus.
A classic of modern Taiwanese art now has a perfect reproduction. The clone was made with the help of high-definition scans, and it's just gone on display at the memorial to its painter. John Van Trieste takes a look once again.
A woman in a richly embroidered kimono locks eyes with two goats in her path. The scene unfolds against a backdrop of lush foliage, vines growing on a trellis that take up most of the canvas. The English title of this painting has been variously translated as Cool Morning or Coolness in the Morning. But what's not in dispute is that this enigmatic painting is a classic of modern Taiwanese art, and it's been on the Culture Ministry's list of valuable antiquities since 2015. Now, thanks to a reproduction made with a high-definition scan, the work can be displayed in two places, expanding its audience. The unveiling of the replica came at the Memorial Center in Taichung that remembers the artist who painted it, Lin Zhizhu, a building where Lin once lived and worked. Lin's son hopes the reproduction of his father's most celebrated painting will bring a greater audience to what his father achieved.
不只是画本身，从巨观上看来的细节，你如果看微观里面，你会发觉他是把精神放在里面，所以就是不一样的地方。
This 1940 painting is Lin's most famous work and is supposed to have been his favorite. It was painted during Japan's colonial rule over Taiwan, when Lin was a fine art student in Tokyo with big ambitions. This was his entry for a highly selective exhibition to mark 2,600 years of imperial rule in Japan. The idea of a mere student winning over the judges was hard to imagine, but Lin pulled it off, becoming the only entry from a Taiwanese painter to make the cut. Though Lin died in 2008, aged 91, his place in the Taiwanese art firmament is uncontested. He's especially remembered for his mastery of a difficult technique involving painting a mix of glue and pigment onto silk. Some in the art world hope to draw more attention to the glue tempera technique Lin made his trademark and passed down to a generation of younger Taiwanese artists.
邀请相关的艺术家来做展演的活动或师生作品的一些展出，然后透过这样的平台媒介，让社会大众对不管对教材或对艺术创作更多的认识。
With the replica's debut, Taiwan now has another way to remember one of its most important painters of modern times, and a chance to rediscover the rest of his life's work. Justin Wu and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
From fraud to conflict to population crises, young artists across Taiwan are demonstrating their awareness of social issues at the National Student Art Competition. Reese Ayers reports on some of the winning entries.
Looking down at a major fraud operation in Cambodia, the subject in this painting could become another victim of an ongoing crisis unfolding across Asia. It's a solemn depiction of a dark truth by high school student Lin Guxun, who used her entry into the 73rd National Student Art Competition to highlight a salient issue in Taiwan.
这边都是手机的原因，是因为就是有家人也是因为手机简讯的关系，确认码之后就被受骗，所以我觉得虽然现在网络发达很好，但是发达的网络也会造成很多伤害。
Lin's work earned her first place in the print category, one of over 100 award-winning pieces in this year's competition, which attracted over 50,000 entries. Many of the young artists use the competition as an opportunity to comment on a range of current affairs issues, from population crises to the advent of AI technology, some looking as far as Ukraine for inspiration for their work.
即使战争这个样子，这个金鱼就比较像是一个希望的感觉，就是人民的希望，就是还是一定都会在，它不会消失。
The annual competition invites students from elementary school all the way up to university, awarding young talent across a range of categories, including calligraphy, comics, and graphic design. It celebrates a new generation of artists who, despite their age, are using their creativity to tackle some of the world's most mature matters. Devon Tai and Reese Ayres for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching Taiwan Plus News. You can visit the Taiwan Plus website or follow our social media for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, take a look at these icy landmarks and sculptures at the annual Harbin Ice Festival in China. I'm Leslie Liao. Take care and see you next time.